Yo, how's it going, everybody? It's MacklinGaming, and in this video, I'm going to be ranking my top 5 favorite open world games of all time. Now, I don't expect everyone else to agree with my top 5. These are not what I think are universally the best video games of all time. These are just 5 open world games that had the biggest impact on me, and I'm going to rank them in order, and I'm going to give you a little backstory on each game and how it impacted me. All right. Starting out with number 5, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Now, this game you could technically say is an open zone game, but I mean, it says right on the back, massive open world adventure, right? So I consider it an open world game and one of the best of all time. It has probably the best side quests in any open world game, where you don't even realize that you're not doing the main story. Each side quest is so captivating, and a lot of them end like with a real dark twist, and it has this medieval dark fantasy vibe that I really enjoy. And Geralt of Rivia is one of the best protagonists in gaming. He's so cool. He's the ladies' man. He's badass. And the combat that you get to do with him is incredible. You have 2 swords, one to kill monsters, one to kill humans, and you can build your character with the perk tree in those 3 different ways. You can go heavy on potions, you can go heavy just on sword play and combat, or you can go heavy on magic and use signs, as he calls them. This game has hours and hours of content, so many side quests, a super long main quest, and it is just a super fun time if you like medieval RPGs. So I say you got to play Witcher 3 if you haven't. It's on PS4, Xbox One, PS5, and Series X. It's on all of the next-gen consoles and the previous-gen consoles, and even Switch and PC. So if you haven't played Witcher 3, what are you doing? All right, at number 4, this was hard. I'm surprised how far this game fell down my list. Number 4, Elden Ring. Yeah, I know. I mean, my channel was pretty reliant on Elden Ring for content, and yes, I will be coming back to play Elden Ring for the DLC as well. But it's one of the more recent open world games that I really fell in love with, so it doesn't have that nostalgic feel to it yet for me. But man, this game was a life-changing game, and I'll explain why. Because I knew of the Dark Souls series, and I tried to play Dark Souls 1, I tried to play Dark Souls 3, and I would get like a few hours in. I was like, this game is way too hard. I'm not going to beat it. I'm not enjoying it. And so I'd put it down. And then Sekiro came out, and I'm such a big samurai fan. I had to play Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. And that game I beat. I stuck with it using guides. I made it all the way and rolled credits on that game. And I was like, finally, I could beat a From Software game. So I love Sekiro. But then when Elden Ring came out, I was like, I have to get into this. It's open world. This is the first time they tried doing that. So I started playing it, and it was just as hard, I felt like, as Sekiro or the Souls games. But you know, this is a game where people will fall off it and they'll just quit or rage quit, or, you know, they'll hate it because it's so hard. And for me, I just had to stick with it. I was like, I'm going to beat this. I'm not going to quit. And that is the huge, like, life-changing moment for me in this game. It builds character because, you know, you want to quit, but you can't. You gotta get through with it. Reaching millennia and dying probably 100 times, like 75 to 100 times. And I'm like screaming. I'm surprised I didn't stream that, but I probably should have for content. But don't worry, we'll be back to it. I'll probably be raging in the near future with the DLC. But to face millennia and just get beat down like over and over, and I just kept getting back up. And I kept going at her. That sounded weird. And I kept fighting her and keep battling. and I eventually beat her. And it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, as long as you keep getting back up and you eventually get that dub. And it was like the best feeling. And I was like, okay, I understand from software games now. Like, this is what it's about. It's about the struggle, getting beat up, but you don't stay down. You get up, you come back for more, and eventually you triumph. And that's why Elden Ring for me is a special game. Number 4 all time, and it only just came out a couple years ago. All right, we're up to number 3 favorite open world game of all time. Red Dead Redemption 2. Unbelievable game. I was just playing it last week. I mean, it still holds up today. It's been 6 years since that game came out. And I remember playing it day one, like, this is the most realistic and detailed open world that I've ever seen. And that still might be true for me today. I mean, the way you can talk to NPCs, the way you got to eat food, you can smoke, you can drink, you can absolutely do anything to anyone. You can talk to them, you can be nice, you can kill people on the street. It's wild. It's a wild game, but it's got a really mature storyline. I really enjoy, because I played Red Dead 1 in college and absolutely loved it. I love John Marston. So when I found out you're playing as a different protagonist, but John Marston's still in the game, I thought that was super cool. I was like, I have to play this. And I have to see the story of Dutch Vanderlyn and how he comes to be the villain. And you see Dutch's gradual demise into absolute insanity, because, you know, he wants his gang to be free and he wants them to just live with no rules, no laws. And you almost root for that. You want the gang to succeed, right? But, you know, the law comes in and society and the police, and they're after him constantly. And, you know, there's one character that's just awful. I'm not going to spoil it, but, you know, he's ratting out the gang to the cops, and they never find their freedom. So it's a tragic arc, and I love that about the game. It does not have a happy ending. It's got kind of a happy ending, like part of it, but as far as Dutch goes, it's tragic. So I love that, and it really just, it has that feel like you're out in the wilderness. And, you know, I grew up going camping with my dad, going fishing and going hiking. And if you love doing that kind of stuff, I mean, you can do all that in this game. You can set up camp, you can fish. There's a bunch of different species of fish. They went in on that game mechanic really well. There's hunting. It's just you in the nature. And it's also got a lot of satire, just like GTA, you know. It's got that satire of like Western gangs and like all the goofy enemies you fight, like the Murfree Broods, and they're just really good at making a satire out of, you know, Western America, so the Old West. So that's why Red Dead Redemption 2 comes in at number 3 on my list. All right, we're down to the final 2. And this one's interesting. I'm going to make a whole separate video on this game and how it changed, how it got me back into Nintendo gaming. So I'm sure you know what it is. Breath of the Wild, right? So I'm playing Tears of the Kingdom, and honestly, I love Tears of the Kingdom. I think it's an improvement on Breath of the Wild. But it's not going to make my list, because Breath of the Wild was like another life-changing game, right? So a little backstory on me. I grew up as a Nintendo kid. I had a Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance. I had an N64, GameCube. I loved all the 90s Nintendo, like late 90s and early 2000s Nintendo games, right? But then I kind of grew out of Nintendo when I became a little teenager. You know, I was too cool. I just wanted to, you know, chase the girls and play sports, and no, I don't want to play Pokemon anymore, right? But as I got older, I kept gaming, but I was playing like Xbox 360, and then I was playing my PS4. And then in late 2016, I saw the trailer for Breath of the Wild. I think it was the one they showed at the Game Awards. And I could not believe what I was seeing. I was like, is this still Legend of Zelda? Like, Breath of the Wild, open world. Like, what is going on? This looks awesome. Kind of like Red Dead, where there's like a lot of nature in it. And I was like, I have to play this when it comes out. And then that's how I learned about the Nintendo Switch. I was like, it's going to come out on a new console in March, of 2017. So there we were, March 3rd, 2017. I got up at like 5 a.m. I drove to Target. It was like 6 a.m. to wait in line. And I was like one of the first 5 people in line. It wasn't like insane then because, Nintendo was coming off of the Wii U. And I don't think hype was like really big for them at the time. But I'm sure Breath of the Wild, like just like it did for me, I think it hyped up a lot of other people. So, but I got there so early. I managed to get in line and get my copy. I got the Nintendo Switch and Breath of the Wild day one. And I have vivid memories of going home and setting that up. And just like, I couldn't believe the opening of Breath of the Wild, that iconic moment you step out onto the plateau and you can see the world. And I was just like, this is nuts. Found a tree branch, started killing things with it. I was like, you can just pick up like any weapons and then the weapons break. I was like, this is a crazy mechanic. Needless to say, I've played hundreds of hours of Breath of the Wild. I think I've beat it like 4 or 5 times. It's my most played Nintendo Switch game. And it got me back into the Nintendo ecosystem with the Nintendo Switch. Like, I've played so many other Nintendo games now that I never used to play. And because of Breath of the Wild, that just got me hooked on Nintendo again. And of course, they've had their best console generation, I think, of all time here with the Switch. So many games you can play. So Breath of the Wild was huge. Another life-changing game. That's why it comes in at number 2. All right, guys, we've made it to my number 1 favorite open world game of all time. And that is The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Yes, indeed. I mean, it's no secret. I'm a huge Skyrim fan, huge Elder Scrolls fan. And again, I got to go back and give you a little history. The first Elder Scrolls game I played was Oblivion, and that was amazing. I absolutely love Oblivion. But Skyrim came along and I was in college, and I remember hearing about Elder Scrolls V's coming out and seeing the little 3-minute trailer they showed of the gameplay. And I probably watched that trailer like 100 times over the year leading up to its release, right? So I was psyched for Skyrim. I mean, the hype was massive. When I went to that midnight release for Skyrim with my buddy, there was a massive line of people there. Like, everybody was psyched for Skyrim. The hype was real. And the most important thing about that was it lived up to the hype and then some. It became like a mainstream pop culture type of game. Like, taking an arrow to the knee, that whole meme, like, no one expected that to happen and blow up like it did, right? So, I mean, it was a sensation when it came out. But as far as the actual game goes, unbelievable atmosphere. You're in this Nordic, Iceland looking fantasy world. It's got incredible music, one of the best soundtracks of any game ever, one of my favorite soundtracks. And again, it's a game like The Witcher 3 where the side quests are engaging. You can just run around for hundreds of hours doing the side quests, ignoring the main quest. And the combat is fun. The way they kind of took or borrowed BioShock's like two-handed combat system and just ran with it. And you can have spell in one hand, sword in another, or 2 axes, or a sword and shield, and the different abilities and shouts you can get. I thought the dragon language was incredible. Like, this guy invented a whole language and made it like realistic. And they had writing, and he said like the way they would scribble on the stone walls, they'd use their thumb as a pivot point and scratch the rock. And you see all these like symbols, you know, when you go to get the shouts at the walls, right? This guy was a genius at creating like the dragon lore. And as far as having the dragons in the open world, it was the most amazing thing I've seen. Like this giant beast will fly down, like it's all seamless. It'll just like raise an entire village, and you're trying to battle this thing. It's super difficult, and it's got awesome sound effects. Like they made the dragons feel like they were real, you know, even though it's complete fantasy. So Skyrim takes my #1 spot, and it probably will hold that spot forever because it has nostalgia for me as well after all this time, right? So I'm a big nostalgia guy. It's hard to beat nostalgia for me. That's why Ocarina of Time for me is still better than any Zelda game, any other game ever made, because, you know, I'm big on that, right? So Skyrim is a special game. You got to play it if you haven't. And that wraps up my top 5 favorite open world games of all time. What are your favorite open world games of all time? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe so you can see my videos as soon as they get published. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.